Round and round we go. We're back again. It's Tuesday night. It's Paduti in the News at the Paduti Live Podcast Theater at Harrison's on Corbett in downtown Tarentum. I've got another great guest joining me. We've met on several other shows. Alesia Galati, welcome to Paduti in the News.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
It's going to be a lot of fun. We've collaborated on Rise and Outshine. I think I've been a guest on your podcast.
Yeah.
Were you on the trivia show as well?
I was.
Yeah, so we have a history we can go back through. But Galati Media has more shows than I do. I think there's over 50 podcasts under your management. Is that correct?
That we've worked with. Right now, we're downsizing, which is nice, actually. It's actually really nice. I've been working a lot of hours. So right now we're down to 10 regular shows that we're managing. But we just launched 2 this month. So yeah, it's not February, in January. So it's been wild.
It ebbs and flows. It's amazing, how this industry works and the cycles that come around. And you'll be bombarded for a while, and then you can kind of like level out, have a better process, and then all of a sudden this another wave comes in, and Here we go. It's off to the races.
Exactly.
Well, we've got 6 stories about live podcasting coming your way. We've already pre-selected them. I've shared them with Alesia. We were talking a little bit beforehand. We're going to have a good time coming up, about 35, 40 minutes of podcast news, which means, Alesia, I only have one more question for you. What time is it?
Time to get started. Let's go.
What time is it? What time is it? Oh, it's time for Paduti and the News. Paduti and the News. The only live news podcast about podcasting from the stage. Paduti and the News. Paduti and the News. The only live news podcast about podcasting from the stage.
The only live news podcast about podcasting from the stage. Alesia, welcome to this side of the theme song.
Yes, that's a banger. I love it.
Everybody, that song really gets your blood pumping. It's almost the highlight of the show, but I would say the highlight of the show is having Alesia here with us tonight. Alesia from Galati Media and the Empowered Podcasting. What's you have a podcast about all of this stuff.
Yes, Podcasting Unlocked is my podcast.
That's it. Podcasting Unlocked. Tell us a little bit about that show.
Yeah, so we're actually going to hit quite a couple hundred episodes. I think it's 300 episodes this year, which is pretty wild. But it is a podcast all about podcasting twice a week. So Tuesdays are solo episodes from me. Sometimes it's me answering podcasting questions in 10 minutes or less, or it's me talking about strategies that you can implement to do better at podcasting. And then on Thursdays, I have guests on, and it's really just to showcase other podcasters, show what they're doing, because I really don't believe that there's one right way to podcast, that everybody gets to decide what's going to work best for them. So that is Podcasting Unlocked.
Podcasting Unlocked. I'll have that in the show notes. And I was listening back through, I think, a recent episode. Not only are you hitting 300 episodes, I think you have a client that just hit 300 episodes. And one of the stats that you gave was that's less than, was it 0.3% or like 3% of podcasts making it to 300 episodes?
Yeah, less than 3%. I want to say he was either 1.9 or 2.9. And I was like, it's less than 3 for sure. I had seen it when I was recording with her for the episode. And it's just incredible, one, to be able to support her through this journey. She was my very first client that we launched her podcast, and she's consistently showed up, and I'm so incredibly proud of her. And then, yeah, I'm hitting 300 this year, which is just crazy banana pants to me. But I'm excited, and just I'm also considering what is it going to look like from 300 on? What kind of shifts or adjustments do I want to make? And
for those of you new to podcasting, crazy banana pants is a common term that we use to describe how absurd it is to get to 300 episodes, how much work it takes, and the processes that you have to build. And that's what we call crazy banana pants.
Exactly.
Well, are you ready to get into our 6 stories tonight?
Yes, let's go.
I'll have all of Alicia's links in the show notes. Not only that, we have a thing called Paduti and the Crew, and everybody who's been on the show is now part of the crew. There is a crew page on the back end of the podcast website for Paduti and the News. You can go there and see every guest that's ever been on the show, their story, their backlinks, links to their social profiles, and then when they come back, because I'm certainly inviting Alicia back on future episodes, all the episodes that Alicia will ever be on will be attached to that page, her crew page. She'll be part of Paduti and the Crew as of Thursday morning.
Love it.
Well, let's get into story number 1. This one is a lot of fun. This one, we called it "You Got It, Dude." And if you know just from that saying, you're going to know what this is about. At a recent Headgum live show in San Francisco, the host of the HD podcast took live podcasting fully off the rails in the best way possible by performing a table read of completely unhinged Full House spec script written by Jeff, who, not me, not this Jeff, but a different Jeff with a G, who openly admitted he barely remembers the original show. The script, titled Full House Blown Smoke, leaned hard into absurdity, featuring dark cloud watching monologues from Michelle, peer pressure via cigar-smoking cool girls named Toilet and Outhouse, a painfully fragile math teacher named Mr. Hung, and a fictional radio show plagued by a caller trying to invent offensive slurs, forcing the performers to navigate comedy, discomfort, and audience energy in real time. It was a messy, hilarious, and a reminder that live podcasting isn't just about recording an episode. It's about creating a shared moment you simply can't replicate in a studio. And this is one of those stories about podcasting I love. I love live. I love riding that edge of chaos. And this is an example of a podcast took something that a lot of us Gen Xers, millennials are very familiar with. We're all familiar with Full House. And they did this community meetup where they did a fake Full House script. They did a table read. They acted out the show. You know, what better way to bring a community of people who love that comedy sitcom of the 90s with just bringing back some of those memories and telling some stories in this environment of a podcast and acting it out and meeting each other and talking and laughing and sharing stories that they loved growing up when they were growing up watching the show. What were some things that you took away from doing a live event like this, Alicia?
Yeah, what I think is interesting is that, so many podcasts are not live, right? And so it's like, and from my experience, a lot of the live shows that I've seen or heard have been comedy people. And so I think as, podcasters or creators, how can we take even just a bit of that to say, how can we ad-lib a little more? How can we infuse more of our personality into the things that we're creating and talk about the maybe shows that we enjoy or the music that we're enjoying to give more personality? And also we can delete it later if it does ride that edge of, no, that was a little too much chaos there, right? But I think that it really gives you a little bit of freedom to do that. So I think it's really unique and such a fun way to get your audience involved as well with the show that, I grew up in a cult, so I didn't watch that show growing up. Totally sidebar.
That's our second story tonight.
But I still think that you can infuse so much of that. Right now I'm wearing my Star Wars sweatshirt, and on one of my walls I have tons of Star Wars stuff. So how can I infuse some of that into my personality on my show and be more wholly me and more realized me than just I am the buttoned up podcast person?
There are different podcasts and different niches with different topics, and you're wearing Star Wars. If you had a Star Wars podcast and you liked fan fiction, this is something you could perform live as a special event for your fans. You could go out, hey, we're going to rent out this bar, we're going to tell stories, we're going to even share a story that we wrote and kind of build on that world that we all love and know about. and just have this unique experience that you can't get just from downloading an MP3 file. You're going to be in front of people performing something that you're passionate about, to people who are also passionate about the same thing. So whether it's Full House or Star Wars, think about how can you incorporate storytelling with your fans, with the people who could come to see you in the community, maybe even people who aren't familiar with you, but there are people who love Full House in the community.
Right.
Millions of people love Full House, and they find out there's a special Full House reading going on. That might just be the thing to get them out of the house and introduce them to your podcast.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're going to the story number 2. Now, a lot of times I like to find stories that are related to my guest's background. And Alesia has a supply chain management background, a little side note in her bio. And I was like, well, the closest I could get this week was a railroad conference. And I said, that's kind of supply chain. It's part of the supply chain. Maybe not what you're trying to manage. You're just trying to get your goods into the warehouse. But this was a conference just for the railway industry. And part of the conference is they had live podcasting on the stage. And I like to file these types of stories under industries where I never thought there'd be a podcast.
Right.
And here we are telling a story about the railway industry. And it's the RIA, the Railway Industry Association's annual conference, got underway in London with major news for the UK rail sector as Transport Secretary Heidi Alexander marked the introduction of landmark legislation to create Great British Railways, a new publicly owned body aimed at unifying track and train under one accountable system. Alongside high-level policy discussions, industry leaders, and debates on rail reform, the conference program also featured a live podcast recording, signaling how podcasts are becoming a trusted format for unpacking complex topics in real time. As conferences increasingly blend policy, expertise, and audience engagement, live podcasting is emerging as a powerful tool to extend conversations beyond the room, turning industry events into long-tail content that educates, informs, and builds authority well after the conference ends. This is, like I said, this is an example of a place where you would never expect to see a podcast. And the fact that even the railway industry, as part of their conference, is starting to incorporate podcasts from their industry as part of the entertainment, as part of the curriculum or the stage time that they give, that's showing you the power of podcasting over perhaps hiring just a magician or a musician or a comedian, or just having panel after panel after panel. Having industry experts up on stage sharing their knowledge and their stories is a direction we're seeing a lot of conferences go. And I think if you can tie in your expertise into a place where your community is participating, and they're participating in this conference, what better way to put yourself and position yourself in front of a whole group of potential new clients or new listeners?
Yeah, I think it's really unique for sure. It makes me think of a couple years back, we did such a random client, but they did, why can't I think of the word? It was like where they would buy houses, but it was like more corporate level. I can't think of what the word is.
Not flipping, but like on a corporate level.
Commercial real estate.
Or commercial, yeah.
There we go.
I was on the grittier side of that.
Yes. So it was a commercial real estate equity company. And they were the ones giving a lot of the loans out and hiring. It was very interesting, but we were producing almost like a course that they were selling. And a lot of it was getting subject matter experts in to talk about the topic. And then we would air those, and then we would have live discussion for the people that were taking the course. And I think that this can tie in really well, especially for very industry specific things, even thinking about how can companies be maybe more open with their board meetings, with their the more informative conversations that my background is in corporate. So how could we have had more of those meetings be podcasts, right? Even if it's a private podcast just for employees, finding ways to connect with people, especially because we all learn differently, we all take in information differently. I was on a session this morning, and half of it, my brain was just not fully I don't know if I didn't have coffee yet or what, but my brain was just not fully processing the first half. And I was like, I wish I could like go back and listen to this. All right, it's a good thing it's recorded. Hopefully when the recording's up, I'll be able to go back. But like, what a great opportunity having it recorded to be able to say, oh, we have this thing. And I always think too, like very industry specific. No industry is too specific for a podcast. When I first started podcasting back in 2017, 2018, I went to a podcasting conference. And I met a woman. She had been podcasting at that point for like 5 years. So she was like an OG. And she was podcasting about Pez, like the little dispensers. And I was like, wait a minute. Like, I'm trying to wrap my head around this. Like, the gas station gross candy dispensers. Like, is that what you're talking about right now? She was like, yep. And there are conferences and like there are events and we all meet. And I was like my mind was blown. And from then on, I was like, anybody can have a podcast.
And that's true. That's something that we're finding out, that there was something for everybody. No matter what you're passionate about, no matter what your interests are, maybe even what your profession is, there are other people who are looking to share ideas with. They're looking for your knowledge. They're looking just to maybe even write in and tell you their experiences and share their own stories. You can find your community. You can really build an audience based on whatever you love. We'll keep it going. Let's go over to football, but not the kind of football we're talking about in America this weekend. Former Ireland internationals Rory Best and Andrew Trimble brought elite-level insight to a live recording of BBC Sports, I'm guessing it's North Ireland's, the Ireland Rugby Social, hosted at City Armagh Rugby Club in front of a capacity crowd. Joined by Conor Murray and presenter Gavin Andrews, the conversation focused on Ireland's upcoming Six Nations Championship, examining Andy's, Farrell's evolving game plan, the pressure of recent success, and realistic expectations for the campaign ahead. The discussion also zoomed in on Ulster's prospects under head coach Richie Murphy, blending high-level analysis with candid reflections on life inside professional rugby. Whoop, it wasn't football at all. It was rugby. Wrong sport. It was a reminder that live podcasts don't need spectacle to be powerful. Sometimes authority, trust, and proximity to the audience are the draw. And if you're a fan of rugby, if you've been following the sports, if this is your home team, imagine how exciting it would be to not just, usually you watch a game in a stadium or on TV at home. Here's a small pub or a small theater space where you can go in, you're in the same room with these stars, the coaches, and you're being immersed in the moment. You're feeling their passion and you're hearing their stories and you're just sitting right in there taking it all in. This is one of those experiences that you can't recreate on a podcast, but by being there live in the moment, it's a whole new element to these hosts, to these players. You get a whole new perspective on the game and who these people are.
Yeah, I read a lot of books, if you can see my background, if you're watching this, lots of books. I read about anywhere from 2 to 250 books a year. And there's a local author to me, and I went to her speaking about her new book that was coming out, and it wasn't recorded. And I think kind of because it wasn't recorded, it was like, oh, you have to be there and you have to be fully like pay attention and be immersed. But the interaction, and it was like fully booked. You could not get more tickets at all. Like I tried to get tickets for my friend after I'd gotten mine. Not happening. Everybody is sold out. But she did it through NC State, which I thought was really unique. Like they had paired together to then create this experience. And so then you got to meet her afterwards, which was really cool. But just having that very interactive Q&A with someone who kind of understood what the book was about, understood the kinds of questions that we would want to know, but also allowed the author to go deeper was really cool. But there's something about this timeliness that live brings that I think is really interesting, especially as someone who does very evergreen content. And I was talking to my kiddo, he's 8, and he's obsessed with WWE, and he wants to launch a podcast about WWE. And I'm like, look, buddy, if you do this, we have to be very timely because belts change. At least according to my understanding, at least every other week or every month. Potentially, some people keep them longer. We're going to have to like last weekend was, what was it? Not WrestleMania, Royal Rumble was last weekend. So we were watching Royal Rumble and it's like, all right, Royal Rumble happened. You got a podcast about that like the next day or right after, and then share that information. And then because if you wait until after WrestleMania, which is next weekend, then there's going to be too much time in between, right? And so there's something about this timeliness to the content that makes, I think, it more interesting for the audience, but also pushes them to tune in a more timely manner too.
So wait a second. Macho Man Randy Savage isn't the Intercontinental Heavyweight Champion anymore?
I don't think so, but don't ask me.
That was like a 1988 joke. And events like that, like you're saying, you're saying you produce a lot of evergreen content where you're giving tips and tricks and practical uses for podcasting. The thing I've come to notice, and I've alluded to this on a couple shows already, is the thing that I'm really, really falling in love with live podcasting is it is such a once in a lifetime, even in the history of the world. Like this show that you and I are doing tonight will never happen again in the history of the world. These 6 stories, you and I sharing the stage, it can only happen once. And I say it's so different than musicians and comedy, where musicians are, they'll come to a town, they'll play the same 15 songs, and then they go to the next town and do the same 15 songs. And comedians work on a routine, they perform that routine, and eventually they build it up a solid hour, and they take that around and they perform that hour. With podcasting, it can only happen once. You and I can't go to Cleveland tomorrow and do this show over again.
Right.
It's already been recorded and heard about. So the chance of seeing this real time in the moment is a once in a lifetime opportunity. And that's what I'm finding out that I love even more and more as I do more and more live shows, is it is such a special moment. And you have to be there to be a part of it. And to be in that room with those rugby players and to hear the stories, if you're a fan of that sport, I mean, to me, nothing is better than those raw moments, those where you're vulnerable, you're taking questions from the audience. You have no idea what they're going to ask you. You could have fumbled the ball last year and cost the game, and they're still harping on you about it. Yeah. And it just makes something so much more special than a polished studio podcast, which I'm not taking anything away from a polished studio podcast. I'm saying this is something different. This is a new form of entertainment that people are starting to embrace, and they're really, really liking live podcasting.
100%. I saw the same author, I don't know, it was maybe 3 months later, she was the interviewer for another author. And it was more of a collaborative conversation during the actual interview space. And it was a completely different energy, different vibe, different audience, different venue, right? And so like I bought tickets to both because I want to see her, right? Like that's why I went I have more books I need her to sign because I only could get 2 of them signed at a time, right? And so, yeah, I think that there is something very unique about that once in a lifetime kind of moment.
Yeah, if you get the chance, go experience it. Whether it's, even if you like, if it's a cooking show, a lot of times you'll see celebrity chefs do special one-offs, or even comedians, like they'll come to town and before they do their performance, they may do a taping of their podcast. Like Doug Loves Movies is famous for doing that. He goes to town to perform comedy. At 4:20 is kind of his thing. He performs an episode of Doug Loves Movies. So you could see Doug Loves Movies, then you could catch the 7 o'clock show, and you could have a whole night out, just supporting this comedian that you love. So think about ways, where can you perform your show? What audiences can you get in front of? It'll really change your perspective on what's possible for podcasting. And here's one that I love. This one happened in Australia, and they built like a giant tent city and they had all these other like installations around. If you get a chance to check out Beyond the Valley, it's the 10th year that they've had this, and it is just an incredible event. At Australia's Beyond the Valley, now in its 10th year, brands leaned hard into experience-led activations designed specifically for Gen Z. And one standout move was the creation of a dedicated live podcast space. Inside a multi-purpose venue called The Lounge Room, festival goers could drop into live programming from the Daily Os, curated conversations, and late-night cinema right alongside wellness hubs, interactive brand experiences, and cultural moments. Rather than shouting for attention, brands focused on connection, presence, and value, meeting audiences where they already were. It's a strong signal that podcasts aren't just content anymore, they're becoming infrastructure for modern, experience-driven events. Events like this, where there were some places that looked like gas stations, and you'd walk in and it'd be like an arcade, or it looked like an ice cream shop, and you'd walk in and it'd be this whole other immersive experience. And this lounge, if we could pull back on that photo, it's this giant tent space. It's set up like a living room. There's couches, and there's just people doing live podcasts all day long, in and out, telling stories, sharing events. They're having this cultural moment inside this one space.
Yeah, something I have been ruminating on, and I have social anxiety. So the idea of going out and like doing something like this is really, it's a little terrifying, right? Like this is me. It's a little scary, but I know someone who's hosting an event that is a bookish event, and I have a podcast, it's my hobby podcast, all about books. It's called We Read Smut, and it's exactly what it sounds like. And so this conference, it's called Temptation in the Triangle, because I live near the Triangle in Raleigh, Durham. There's another one in there that is that area. And I was talking to her about like, what would it look like? Because I've seen, bookish conferences where they have panels and they have all these things. And I was like, what would it be like to do a live podcast at this event? What would it like? Maybe I get a table. Maybe I sit there and I have my microphone and there's the background noise of all of the people kind of, and like then put that up on my own podcast, right? Of course. But then being able to maybe go table to table and talk to each of the authors to get more of that experience. And at what point would I be able, like realistically, be able to like manage getting all of those people together in one room, in one space, to be able, like 30 authors, logistically, it's not going to happen. Like in a recording studio. And so to be able to have that experience, like, what would that look like? And so it's happening in a couple months, and I'm thinking like, I think I might need to actually do this. Maybe I will circle back with you and say I did it.
Well, you would be amazed to hear how much podcasting has become like the new media in regards to podcasters are getting media passes to all kinds of events and conferences just for the sake that they want the podcasters there to record content, just like you're talking about. They'll make it happen. If you can interview 10 of the authors while you're there, if you can get a private room with you're hosting your podcast live, they will do that as part of the entertainment, and they'll give you, in many cases, they'll give the podcast host a pass to come into the conference for free. You'll do a little bit of work on the side, but you get to enjoy all the benefits, all the parties and the atmosphere, and you get to take in all the main keynotes, and you get to do what you love, which is interview other authors. So, for those of you at home watching, keep that in mind. Your expertise is your podcast. Your podcast is your asset that can get you into events for free. Even if that's all you want to do, like if that's success, you could just have a podcast to get into events for free. I'm telling you that it's happening more and more, and it's becoming easier and easier to show that you're going to do some recording. They'll let you in to help promote the event for that year and the following year.
That is such a great idea. Like I'm thinking about sold out events that I would not be able to get to because they're sold out. Like I'm doing a year of 100 no's or 100 rejections or whatever that is. What a great ask, because I would love to be able to get to these events. And if it's a no, it's already a no. before I even ask. So why not?
And this next story is a great example of, kind of walking that line, that hybrid line. Maybe this isn't quite performing, but this guy, Jeff Pulver, he's at a conference right now, and the gentleman interviewing him is in his home studio. So he's doing a live stream broadcast, interviewing people at conferences, doing a live show, while the guy's live on the showroom floor, and they're talking about AI, of course, because that's all we ever talk about anymore. This was recorded live at Cloud Connections. Publisher Doug Green sat down with Jeff Pulver, CEO and Chief Evangelist Officer of VCon Foundation, to unpack what Pulver calls a ground zero moment for emerging AI communications industry. Drawing parallels to the early days of VoIP, Pulver explained how VCon introduces a standardized, trustworthy way to capture and structure conversations across voice, video, messaging, and email, so AI can finally work with consistent, high-quality data. Built around 3 pillars, high-definition voice, memory, and trust, VCon embeds compliance, consent, and governance directly into the communications layer, positioning live podcast conversations not just as content, but as structured, intelligent assets that may soon power entirely new products, services, and revenue models. And if somebody, if you have some anxiety about performing live on stage, this is a great way to maybe take that first step, those little baby steps to work your way up to performing at the conference, on a stage, or even in a private room where they have like one of their sessions.
And you're getting their first thoughts too, right? Right after maybe they heard someone speak, or they're having discussions with other people. And I think that is such an important part of these live conferences, and being able to tap into that, because you're maybe high on the, like, I'm having all these great conversations, I'm doing all these great things, and I have all these thoughts, and you get home and you forget half of them. Right? But you're able to tap into them like right as those kind of aha moments are happening. That's really incredible.
Yeah, that live reporting for that conference, that gentleman is recording that interview. He's broadcasting to his audience. He's talking about that conference. He's probably going to get some other interviews that he'll release after the conference. And as the months go on, the weeks go on, that information is getting out to the public over and over and over again. He's getting content for a show while talking about and pushing the agenda for next year's show. He's building that momentum for future episodes. So, think about that. Think of your podcast as an asset to help these conferences grow and get that snowball rolling so that they have a bigger turnout the following year. And we talked about rugby. We have a big game coming up this year. Well, this Sunday. I think we just say the big game. We're not allowed to, we don't have any licensing rights to say the actual name of the big game on February 7th or 8th, February 8th. There will be a big game played for football. But beforehand, during the weekend celebration, here's another great way that you can tie in an event with fans who will be in that area. Ahead of Super Bowl, ESPN Radio is turning podcasting into an appointment event with a live taping featuring Sports Center icons Rich Eisen and Chris Berman at the American Conservatory Theater Strand Theater in San Francisco. The February 4th event includes a meet and greet, 2-hour live recording packed with SC Top 10 nostalgia and personal stories, exclusive merchandise, food, and, importantly, 100% of the tickets benefiting the V Foundation for Cancer Research. It's a powerful example of how live podcasts are becoming cultural moments, blending community, storytelling, and purpose while giving fans something they can't get from a feed drop alone. And I love this example. I love seeing examples where it's not just about, hey, I can sell as many tickets as I can. We're going to have this moment talking about sports and football. But all the money that gets raised that night is for the community benefit, for this cancer foundation. They're donating all the money for a charity. And we've seen stories like this throughout the history of this show. And it's one of the things that I admire the most is people do just love podcasting. They do just love getting up in front of an audience. And in some cases, they can do that as a fundraiser to build up their community, to support other members in their community. this is a win-win all around.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that it really, again, to like that live event kind of aspect of the people are already there, right? They've already shown up to the big game. They're excited about it. And they're going to be more likely to want to engage in these conversations, to be there live rather than, what else are they going to do? Maybe go out and check out the sites, but they're there for the game. So why not get this experience along with it? And I do like this idea of using a charity or using this event to promote a charity to give back to the community in some way. And I think that really just ties to like, how can you use your podcast to, or even your live event to give back to, or to give purpose to show that you're not just like, we're in it for the money too. Yes, that's great. We need money to survive. But also, how can we use charities and use our events to kind of show, hey, here's where my values lie?
Yeah, a lot of times, not everything, even though we talk about live podcasts, not every live podcast is recorded for release. Sometimes it's a special event. It's just a special occasion, an excuse to get your fans together, and they don't even record it. They'll just do it as a one-off. And a get-together like this, even though they're calling it a live podcast, they may or may not record and release that. But people love Rich Eisen, they love Chris Berman, and they're going to want to hang out and hear all those stories of 90s Sports Center and early 2000s Sports Center. And while they're doing it, it's also going to charity. So there are multiple ways to think about live podcasting. There are multiple types of events. So we gave you 6 different examples tonight, and all 6 were as different could be.
Yeah.
And just start thinking about how can your show go beyond the borders of your home studio or your basement. How can you take it out into the public and create this moment in real life? We're all craving more connections. We're all, I think, a little bit tired of doom scrolling and streaming all night long on Netflix or YouTube videos. These events are steamrolling towards us. More and more people are going out. They're hanging out with people. They're doing these in real life connections. This is something that is coming to us fast, and it's growing rapidly. So think about not just taking your podcast out into the public, but there's got to be other podcasts in your neighborhood that you can go out and support and have a night out. You might spend $10, $15. Wow. Even if you have the worst night of your life, you're out $10. So
Right.
Get out there, support independent podcasters, independent creators, and can you believe it? Actually, it's over already. It goes so fast. I was also going to say, don't forget to support Galati Media. All right, let's one more time. I'm going to turn the floor over to you, Alesia. You can plug, promote, talk about anything you'd like, and tell everybody where you want them to go. Where are you sending them?
Yes. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. I have Galati Media, which is a full-service podcast management agency. We support podcasters through launch and so much more, really around the strategy and making sure that we're making your podcast the best it possibly can be. We recently have a new client that they don't want to be on social media at all, so really focusing on the search engine optimization of that side. So working on all of that kinds of stuff. But if you're curious about it or if you want to know more about it, you can go to helpmypod.com. Keeps it very simple. You can book a free consultation there and we can talk about your podcast.
Help my pod. I might need to go there to get some help for this show. Sometimes I struggle with reading. So nothing can help me with that, I'm guessing.
Sorry. No,
Yeah.
we all struggle with that.
Well, I'd like to tell you, I do this live show here. I have so much fun. I've met so many people. I've told so many stories. And the theater that I'm sitting in right now, we built outside of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. It's available for anybody to use. If you have a podcast and you want to try doing what I'm doing right now in front of a house of 40 people, you're welcome to use it. I don't have a contract. I don't require any type of minimum ticket sales. I'll build you a landing page. I'll record the event for you, produce the event for you, help you sell tickets. I'll give you back the recording. I don't even take any ownership over the content. And at the end of the night, we sit down and we split the door 50-50. If you like it, we do it again. If you don't, we shake hands and we go our separate ways, and you tried it. And that's all I'm asking people to do. This is an offer that I don't think you can say no to. It doesn't cost you anything to say. You're not on the hook for anything. So, think about podcasting in a different way. Think about how you can do it live on stage and have this other asset, all these stories that we're talking about. How can you participate in what's becoming one of the fastest growing entertainment segments, live podcasting, live events, live event podcasting? I really think this is the future and the business model for most podcasters within the next 2 to 3 years. So I appreciate everything that you brought tonight, Alesia. It was a lot of fun. And I just have one more question for you. Do you know what time it was?
I mean, right now it's time for bed, I think.
What time is it?